Welcome to the Fall Flipping Challenge, brought to you by Lemons to Lemonade. 20 or 30 YouTubers collaborated in this challenge. Will they go fall and festive, or spooky and spellbinding? Find out on October 23rd. I predict you will enjoy this video. I predict you will watch all of the videos in the playlist. I strongly suggest you watch until the end. So this is my piece. This is what I'm painting for our Halloween challenge. It's just a modest little dresser that I paid $25 for, probably too much. So I get started cleaning it as usual, and you can see all the stains inside those drawers. I'm not exactly sure what that was, but it is old, but it was never a well-made dresser, certainly not dovetail, but it is all wood. So it's a cute little dresser, and I'm excited to show you what I do with it. I only had to make a few little repairs, and one of them was to repair the split at the bottom of this drawer. And I just used Titebond quick and thick and put the glue in the crack and just used a clamp and let it dry. And it was as easy as that to make that repair. Next, I'm using Would You Bend wood molding. This is the first time I ever used it, and I really enjoyed it. So you have to use some sort of heat source with this. Here I'm using a heat gun. And if you don't, and you try to unroll that, it'll just snap right in two. It's real brittle, but when you apply heat to it, you can just see, if you watch when I use the heat gun on here, you'll just see how it settles down and conforms to the dresser. So it's super easy to use. So you want to heat it whenever you want to bend it or whenever you want to cut it. Did you notice how that snapped right off? Because I didn't heat that, but it was okay because it was longer than I needed. So here, what I'm doing is the same process. And I'm getting a couple pieces of tape ready and start with my glue. Get that tape down. And then I use the heat gun again so I can use my X-Acto knife to trim that, butt it up against that other piece to get a nice cut. So I love the way this molding looks on this dresser, and it definitely takes it up a notch. But we're not done yet. I use Dixie Belle's Boss on the inside of those drawers because there's so much, it's stained, and I don't know whether it's bleed through in the wood or what, but I have a plan for these drawers, and I just want to make sure that they're just kind of sealed in. And there's a few cracks on the piece. Nothing major, so I'm just using Dixie Mud in brown and just filling any little holes or cracks. So that was just a simple crack on the side. And then of course you want to sand it smooth. I love Dixie Mud because it's so easy to sand. I'm just using a 220 grit sanding sponge. And it's definitely doing the job. Next, I paint it with Dixie Belle's Barn Red. This is chalk mineral paint, and I'm just painting directly on the piece. It's looking bright and beautiful already. And look how easily it covers that Dixie mud as well. Very nice, smooth, and looks good. Notice the molding on the front of that dresser, how it turned out. Well, I'm going to be painting over it. It accepts the paint real easily. You just want to make sure that you get in all the nooks and crannies of the molding. There, that looks nice. Next, I'm taking Dixie Belle's Crackle. See the top, how it's so smooth? I am putting a layer of Crackle on because I'm going to use then another color paint and let the barn red show through the cracks. You want to put a good heavy layer on and try not to overwork it by brushing back and forth too much. And I'm just going around the edges. So here's the second color that I'm using. I am using Silk Mineral Paint, all-in-one mineral paint, in the color Cape Current as I go around the edges and the top. And you'll see it doesn't take long to get that crackle effect. Now again, you don't want to overwork this paint. You don't want to brush back and forth and back and forth. You just want to make a few simple strokes to just get the coverage you need. And that's all there is to it. And there you can see the crackle effect, especially here on the top. I love it, it looks good. Okay, so next I am taking Gemstone Mousse in Golden Gem, and I'm just stirring it up a little and using an artist brush to go over the detail on this molding. I'm just kind of using a dry brush and just hitting the high points on that molding. I think it's looking pretty regal, and I did, get some on the blue, but that was okay. I came back later with, again, a small artist brush and touched up the blue. There's going to be a link at the end of my video and in the description box of the playlist for all of these videos. Now I am taking gilding wax in gold from Dixie Belle, and I'm taking the Moroccan stencil, and I just have it sitting on top of the drawers, and I am just using a soft brush kind of and just going over it real quickly with the gilding wax. Normally when you use paint to stencil, you want to offload some of the paint on that brush, or off the brush rather. With the gilding wax, it's a real simple process and you don't have to worry about offloading at all. And you just want to match it up. And I think these drawers look really cool, especially with the molding. Now I'm taking Big Mama's Butter from Dixie Belle, and it is a scented conditioning wax. Oh, I wish you could smell it. It smells amazing. This scent is called Flannel, and it's very masculine. It just, it almost smells like aftershave. So I use it on the inside and also on the bottom of the drawer, just and the sides, just to help it glide in a little more smoothly. Okay, so you may have noticed that it had glass pulls on it, drawer knobs in the beginning, and I just didn't feel like they were appropriate to this project, so I'm going to save them for another project. So it's unusual when I turn down crystal knobs and in favor of wooden knobs, but I always keep everything, and the plain wooden knobs I'm using redesigned with Prima knob topper mold, and I'm using DOS air dry clay. It's super easy to do this. You just press it into the mold and I find this clay doesn't really even need any cornstarch or any release agent. It just comes out real easily. And you want to attach it while it's wet so that it conforms to the curve of the knob. Otherwise, it'll dry flat and you won't be able to put it on right. So I even paint it while it's wet. You just want to be careful that you get the details in there, that you're using a soft brush. So I may have let this dry a little bit, but super easy to paint these, and I love Moonshine Metallics, and this is Gold Digger is the color. So I'm doing the outsides first, and that makes it a little easier for me to then paint the top. So that's what they look like, but of course I'm never done. So I use gemstone mousse in garnet. This is an oil-based product, so you want to stir this a little bit. So you make sure that you mix all that oil in and you get all that great goodness. And I just used a brush, and I kind of did a dry brush over the details. Real light feathery stroke. Now this ended up being a little too pink for me. It almost looked kind of rose gold, and that would be very pretty, and I will remember that result for a future project. But for my purposes, I want to see it look a little more red and a little more regal. So never fail, I come back in with gold gilding wax after I buff off that the garnet, and then just use my fingertips and finish the rest of the knobs. So spoiler alert, I am going to use gold gilding wax and just use my fingertip to go over the top, and then this brings me exactly where I want to be as far as the look of these knobs. I like them a lot now. Hey, what kind of a show is this? Are we even in the same video anymore? Okay, well, these aren't the normal supplies that I need for my projects, but I assembled all of these things because my inspiration is Zoltar. Remember the movie Big with Tom Hanks? The base of my piece of furniture is the base for my Zoltar booth. So I am working with what I have, and this is all new territory for me. I'm doing things I never did before. So this styrofoam head was in our store, and it's a woman's head, so it's kind of small. So I'm taking that same air dry clay and Titebond Thick and Quick, and I'm just flattening out pieces and attaching it to the head. I just think it will improve the texture because no one's skin is going to look like styrofoam. So I'm just covering it up. Plus, I think it'll beef up the size of the head a little bit so that it looks a little more masculine. So I just kind of press the clay into the other pieces and continue to work around the entire head. So as it dried, it cracked a little bit, but I wanted to get started painting on his eyes. So I kind of had to feel where they were, and I just wanted to do the background to do the whites of his eyes. And when you see this, you'll see that it did really crack. And that's okay, because I expected air dry clay would crack as it dried. So I'm just using Dixie Mud in white, and I'm just using my fingertip and filling in all those cracks. And I actually end up sanding it a little bit too to smooth the texture. but I do smooth it out pretty well. It's real easy to do, and this only took me a few minutes just to fill in all those little cracks. Like I said, this is a whole new world for me, and I think that would be really fun to work in the theater and do this kind of stuff all the time. So I actually pulled up a picture of a real eyeball because I wanted to get the detail, but I used that same Cape Current paint, and now I'm using, I think, Caviar, and then I used some silk paint as well. I wanted to get the detail in white, and I wanted to get the detail, so that was kind of what I was looking at, and I wanted to get that kind of depth and reflection. So as you know, I'm painting on air dry clay with chalk mineral paint, so nothing here is really glossy. So I do go over his eyeball twice with glaze, not glaze, but Dixie Belle's top coat sealer in gloss. So I continue to work on these details, and I'm starting to figure out how I'm going to build that frame. So I knew I needed some frames, and they were really a perfect fit. So I bought two originally because I thought I could use one for the front and then cut the other one in half for the sides, and then I thought I would just be able to put a piece of wood on the back. Well, you know, that idea and all of these ideas just kind of evolved. So right now I'm using the same technique I used on the drawers, and I just used flake board, and that piece was meant for the back. So my good friend Dawn Gardini, she did on her amazing Glowforge these trim pieces, and here I dry fit it to the top, and then I took it back off and I had cut and numbered all the pieces so I knew where they would go. And again, I use Dixie Belle's Moonshine Metallics in Golden Gem. Excuse me, Gold Digger. Now I paint the frame, and I do the same technique that I did with the Crackle. And again, I had some cracking, so I used the mud, but this time I'm starting to put a little bit of texture. You see where his eyelid is? So I'm building up areas so that it's believable. I used a custom blend of apricot, the Suzanne Spice, pumpkin spice, and coffee bean, and holy guacamole to mix for his skin tone. I had got these hands on Wish, so got a pair of hands, and they were perfect. So they came out really good. So I'm starting to dress him, and right now I think he looks like Mario Brothers. He's not serious enough. The top of the Zoltar booth is a Halloween bowl, of course, that I painted. Now, again, thanks to Dawn, she printed out the vinyl for the words that say Zoltar and the other things. She is amazing because this is an overlay. It's a double. We have the gold lettering, or the red lettering with the gold behind it. So it's a process, as you can see. You have to put it on the backing sheet, and then that little triangle on there is a registration mark for us to be able to line up the letters. So we did the Z, and then the OLT, and then we did the AR. So we kind of separated them out a little bit at a time and put the backing sheet on each, and then adhered the red to the gold. And then when the entire piece was put together, then we adhered that to the plexiglass. I chose plexiglass for the frames. Glass might have been a good idea. You'll see why later, but I wanted it to be lightweight, and you know, it just could always be replaced with glass as long as Dawn's around to make the letters again for me. See how that's turning out? Pretty cool. So here we have it all joined together, and we are applying it to the plexiglass. So it's patience is the key, and taking your time. Of course, I speed the video up so you don't get bored, but it's just really cool. She has all the cool toys. So once you have that down, then you have to burnish it, and then you take that transfer plastic off, and the letters are there. Ta-da! So I used amazing casting resin to do a lot of different molds. I painted them gold and just accented them with a little bit of blue. Or actually, I painted them blue, and now I'm putting the gemstone mousse on. And then I'm attaching those trim pieces, and I cut the plexiglass in two for the sides. And as you can see, that gaps out a little bit. So, had to fix that. Meanwhile, I want to make sure that these drawers are functional, so I am using this colorful tile decoupage paper from the Bells and Whistles line of Dixie Belle, and I'm just decoupaging this to the bottom of the drawers, and I used the Moonshine Metallics in Gold Digger around the outsides of the drawers, or the sides of the drawers rather, on the inside. And then I couldn't resist, but I also had to put a little gold on the outside. You have to pay attention to details, so I'm painting the inside top of the booth. And now let's put some more attention on Zoltar. His arms look too skinny, so I got pool noodles to remedy that. So we're just getting his sleeves out, and well, I guess we're just going full Monty here. Okay, so he looks like he was in the infirmary, but that's you'll see I'm attaching his hands to the pool noodle later, but that casting material that you make casts out of helped to secure his head to his neck. So I kind of used my arms as a measurement and just guesstimated the pool noodles. I ended up trimming them actually later kind of in place. So fortunately, styrofoam's pretty easy to cut. So this was an easy process. But I wanted it to be flexible so that his arms actually bent. So I'm using a drill to make a little hole and using some twine to thread this through, and I use a washer, a large washer, and I tie it on so that it won't pull through the hole from the back. I kind of came up with all sorts of tricks for this one. Also, I tied a real small washer to the other end so that I could easily thread it through the pool noodle, and the weight of it would just let it drop down the hole in the center. Again, I feel like a real engineer here. Okay, so he has this jointed arm, so it is a little bit long, and I do end up cutting it. So I cut the string because that's not going to really do anything in there. So what I do is I just pull it back and just use some tape to attach that string. So then here's where I decide the best way to attach this is using that casting material. So I don't want you to get it confused with casting resin, but I actually went to the drugstore to look for this, and it's actually like bandages with plaster built into it, and you just wet it and you wrap it around and it hardens. So I like a cast does. So I used this on his arm. Actually, the one you'll see me attaching it to, I think, is the other arm. But anyway, stuff works great. All I needed to do was just wrap it and let it dry. And that did the job. So back to the drawers while things are drying. I cut out for my bill acceptor and also for my little fortune slot too. So I had a kind of a sloppy cut, and I actually ended up modifying both of these. I had to get special screws and even the little details. So that was a little pirate sword for Halloween. So I cut the end off so that it would fit, and I made another little mold to cover the little pirate and the skull and crossbones kind of thing. So I painted the bottom of this I used the gold digger on the handle, and I painted the bottom with the gemstone mousse and diamond. And now I'm taking the gilding wax and zinc to kind of make the metal look a little more realistic on the sword, and also to give kind of an aged appearance on the handle. So hopefully it doesn't look like a kid's plastic Halloween sword. So, you know, trying to do my best here with what I've got. I am putting the last touches on the drawers. This has been one of the most fun things that I ever did. I have to say it was expensive too. I spent so much money on it, but it was worth it. This was the color inspiration. It was a toy from FAO Schwarz. Ironically, that's also where they played the piano in the movie. So I didn't want to move him around a lot, so he's here in my store for now, but we'll transport him to the Midway a little bit later. The candles and the crystal ball are battery operated, and you lift up a curtain in the back to replace them or turn them on. I wanted this piece to be totally functional. I think its best home would be in a bar or a restaurant, and they could use the drawers for napkins or whatever. I used an app on my phone to cut the booth out of this picture and put him on a different background, so now he's at home on the Midway. Thank you so much for watching today. If you like this video, how about giving it a thumbs up and also share it with your friends? If you haven't subscribed, you'll want to do that so you don't miss anything. Visit us at LaVintageDecor.company, and on Instagram we're LaVintageDecor, and on Facebook we're LaVintageDecor Altoona. Stay well.